Okay, let's get back into it. So last time we left off, we were kind of thinking we'd get back to doing the plan view and possibly some of the elevation views, maybe all of them, depending on how we go through this video to see how much time we get. So let's carry on where we left off. We were looking at our plan view here. We've got our elevator jambs, our decorative metal elevator jambs, and our panels kind of sketched in a little bit, plus the wall where the wall would be 1 inch behind our paneling. Also got the elevator doors, and that's about all we did from the last video. So this one, we're going to keep detailing out this plan view until we've got it squared away to the point where we're comfortable with it. And then that'll include adding reveals between panels that aren't called out, adding reveals to the metal jambs, and a couple other details that we need to do, plus adding these, not column panels, but these panels that are here outside of that elevator lobby, which will be a part of this print. The ones on the north end are still a part of P3, so that won't change anything that we're doing here, but we do need to make sure we include these as part of our drawing here today. So, all right. Woo, hot tea. Okay, so where do we want to begin? Where do we want to begin? I think maybe a good place to kind of start. Let's think about this. I'm thinking maybe we could pull from the P3 CAD file to be able to add these panels into the drawing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to open that up. We're going to go to open here. When it loads, there it goes. And we're going to go to the Proscenium job folder and pull up the P3 drawing from prelim projects. This will be the veneer portals. See how far our friend Cody over here has gotten on it. I think for the most part it should be pretty well detailed out. Looks like he did a decent job of this. This will be that jam that we were just looking at in our drawing, which would be this guy here. So that's going to be the exact same view of what we're seeing up there. So we're going to snag this. That's going to be important for us. We will need that for our drawing. We'll copy that in. We won't really need the header part of it for this part of the drawing, but we may need it later, so we can always come back to that if we need to. Really, that should be about it. So yeah, let's just copy this part out. We'll bring it into our drawing here, paste it in. And we will most likely have to resize this. I mean, that's kind of a given because the P3 is used for several different areas of the building, not just this elevator lobby, but for other areas as well. So where we left off before, remember when we did these panels, we subtracted the 3 feet or the 36 inches off of these panels here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these panels and we're actually going to stretch them to be a total of 36 inches tall, or I guess wide in this case, because we're looking down at it from the top-down view. So 36 inches there. And what I'm going to do is move that a little bit down further, so that way it's not covered up by anything. And then we're going to use the stretch command to go ahead and increase the width of these panels here. Sometimes the hatching doesn't always go with it. That's okay. If you need to, you can always rehatch those, or you can stretch the hatch just like I did there. All right, now that we've got that, we're going to place this exactly where those panels will be. So currently right now they're kind of shown, they're kind of shown like this, but I almost wonder if it should be bumped off of there a little bit. Let's pull up this view here, A731, view number 2. Oops, A731 view number 2, and we're going to take a look at that and see what that looks like. A731 view number 2. Okay, pulling it up now. There we go. All right, view number 2, which would be this guy here. Okay, so the intention here is for the panels in the elevator lobby to go behind the panels that we have here. So in order for us to do that, we will actually need to increase the blocking behind this panel and bump this off the wall. All right, And the other thing to take note of too is that reveal, although it looks a little smaller there, is also in front of these panels here. So we need to make sure that we also catch that detail too. So this really needs to come out to here like that. These panels, from what they're showing, would want to extend back behind there a little bit. And that would also mean that this wall would extend all the way back to, in this case, that wall would extend all the way back to here. I'm just going to make a line off of there. I made it 18 inches. I might shrink that back a little bit. Maybe we'll go down to 12. That way it shows that the wall does extend past there a little bit. Okay. There is this funky finish on the wall here, which is again by others, but it might be helpful for us to show that as well. So what do they call that out to be? There's a metal angle below, scheduled wall panel with finished edge, refer to spec for more information. Okay, so the spec would probably be most likely in the elevation view. Let's see. We can get back to that in a second here. I just wanted to kind of see what that looked like. We'll mirror this across now that we have it in the right spot. And we're going to use that mirror command with the shift right click mid between 2 points. And I need to select 2 points here that match up. So the middle of that panel and the middle of this panel should do nicely. We'll go ahead and we do not want to erase source objects. We'll say no to that. Whoops, I kind of forgot to mirror my wall too. That was my mistake. So I got to do that again. This time I'll just use these 2 panel lines here. Boom, like that. There we go. All right. Again, just like before, extend this panel up a little bit to there. That'll represent what's going on with that. And then, yeah, that kind of represents what's going on with P3. Now, because P3 is on a separate drawing, one thing you can also do is, although it is part of our scope, you can still use the existing layer to gray it out and to show that, hey, this is there, but it's not part of P4. So that's what we're going to do. Highlight that, gray it out using that existing layer. There are some things here, like this here is a block. Occasionally you'll see a block, and if blocks have something like where you double click on them, you're able to change the layer then, but you're not able to change the layer as it sits as a block in your model space. The other option you could do is you could explode every one of these blocks using the explode command, but then you have to highlight each one of these individually and change the layer to the existing layer, which is going to take a lot more time as well. So we've got that taken care of, representing that that is in fact by Onsite, but on a different drawing. We got everything else grayed out where it needs to be. Let's see. Let's talk about this detail here. See if we can figure this out. So this is some kind of a bot product would be my guess. We're going to take a look at the elevation views of the area around this and see what comes back. See, we got our elevator lobbies here. It looks like there is a view on A611 and here on A611, views 1 and 2, which are pointing towards the elevator lobby. I'm going to use that to see if I can find the finish of the wall that's outside of the elevator lobby here. Okay, so they are calling for that to be WP01. So the next step from there is to find what WP01 is. You want to go to the finished schedule or the finished legend. You'll find that in the project folder under the current architecturals, and there will sometimes be more than one. It just depends on the job. And when you do find that, we're going to be looking for, what do we say, WP01. Here we go. This is a fluted GRFG panel by a company called Formglass. So we're going to go ahead and Google that next. GFRG panel by Formglass. It does say TBD for the profile. We might be able to find that exact one on here. If we can't find it, then we were just going to draw it to the best of our ability based on what we do know. So I've never messed with this company before, as far as I can recall. But most companies online, when they have sort of like fluted panels or channeled panels like that, a lot of times they'll offer the CAD files for those panels. I don't know if they're going to have that here, but we're going to take a look and see what we can dig up. Okay, wall panel details. Let's try that. Okay, not quite what we're looking for. That's just an install guide on how to put those up. Whoops, hold on a minute. Gotta go back and find that again. Sorry, I accidentally closed out of that. There's a possibility it could be in the brochure, although I'm afraid the brochure is probably going to end up just being pictures of their products. But we'll look and see. It's kind of a dated looking company. I like I said, I've never really messed with them before, so I don't know what all they offer on their website, but I would say most times if you go to downloads or information, they usually will typical drawing details. Maybe that'll help. Interior columns, wall applications. Let's try that. See what we can find. Again, that's the install guide. It doesn't really help us here. And neither does that. So I think what we're going to end up having to do is we're probably going to end up having to use what we see on the architecturals and try to replicate that to the best of our ability. It's usually not my go-to, but I mean, it's something that we can do absolutely if we need to. So, we're not 100% sure what WP01 is yet to this point. It's not really called out. According to the finish schedule, it says TBD still for the profile. So, with that being said, we do have a detail here that does show kind of like the design intent of what they're looking for. I'm going to try to pull some measurements on that to see what comes back. So it looks like it's about 1.5 inches thick. There's a metal angle below that sticks out 1/8 of an inch from that. Each half round indentation needs to be about 3/4 of an inch. Each proud portion of that needs to be 3/8 of an inch. So, I mean, we can kind of make this work a little bit. Let's kind of sketch out a little bit of this and see what we can do. So we do know that it's 1.5 inches thick. No big deal. Let's start with an 16-inch block by 1.5 block. Okay, now from there, we can see that there is a 3/8 plateau. This comes down, I would say, probably 3/8 as well. Yep. Okay, so we'll go 0.375 down, 0.75 across the valley, 0.375 back up to the next plateau, and then 0.375 across the top of the next plateau. So then what we'll do is we'll fillet radius 0.375 and radius these corners here, which will give you at least a starting place. And then what you can do with that is you can copy these across. So because I know that that's what that needs to be, I'm going to copy and paste this across. And you can do this a couple different ways. Copying and pasting is kind of the slow approach to it. You could also use the other methods of copying, such as like using the linear array command if you want to mess with that. You can do what I'm doing here, where you copy several at a time. So if you draw a few of them and then use your copy command, you can paste a bunch of them at a time versus just one or two. Just save you a lot of time in the long run. So that should be the pattern that we're going to be using here. It looks like the last one is about half the distance on the plateau, so about 3/16 there. So we're going to bring that back to there. Take a line straight down from there. And again, this is a very, very, very custom item, usually something you wouldn't really probably need to mess with. But because it does exist there, and even though it is by somebody else, we do want to show it because it's going to matter in the grand scheme of things that it is there. All right. Let's go ahead and move this over. And just looking at this here, you can tell that that metal angle is to be in line. There's an align symbol even so. The metal angle below needs to be aligned with the edge of our panel, meaning that these slats, these valleys and plateaus need to be set 1/8 of an inch in from the edge of our panel. I'll show you what that would look like here. Okay, so I got it lined up snug with the face of my panel right now. I'm bringing it over so it's on the side of the reveal. And then it needs to come down 0.125, like that. Okay, now the last thing that I want to do here is it looks like the wall should be shifted up to there. That's just based on what I'm seeing. It looks like they want that wall to be in line with the edge of the, or the back edge of these slats that are being put in place here. Okay, I'm going to trim everything back to a certain point so that everything past this line doesn't really matter. It's gone. That's just showing that this does continue that way past this area, but we're only showing a small portion of it for right now. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to add in the metal angle that we saw below that fluted / slat material. Whoops. Still on the existing layer, just like that. Okay, so we've got that detailed out now. In fact, one thing I can also do is maybe even throw in some hatching here. It looks like they're using some kind of like a particle board type sand hatch, so we're going to use that here. And then we can mirror all of this over to this side, just like we did before. Okay, perfect. All right, now that that's done, I can pretty much call this area of the plan view complete. We'll probably throw in some break lines here shortly to represent that we're cutting off the walls and we're not showing the full extent of the walls. But for right now, that top-down view up here is exactly how it's going to look. So we'll leave it alone for right now, and we'll work around what's going on down here. So we have a different section view or blow-up view that's called out right here. That's 6 on A731. Actually, I don't know if that's really going to help too much. That's what it's showing, but really, I think they meant to call this one out. This is view 7, which is going to be, yeah, 7 is definitely what they meant to call out. They just made a mistake on their part when they labeled their drawing. So view 7 just kind of represents a similar detail to what's going on up above. So we have a reveal. We have a panel that appears to be 1.25 inches thick. But we're going to kind of make that panel look like it's actually 1.25 inches thick, but it's really going to just be 3/4 thick. All right. 2 emails back to back. Look at that. All right. Now I'm going to take these and copy them. Because they are a similar detail, that means that we can probably recycle these. Most likely we're going to need to, also need to, sorry, we're going to need to switch all these back to the correct layer. So we're not using the existing layer anymore for these because these are going to be a part of our drawing and not part of a different drawing. And then we need to verify what the actual panel dimension needs to be, because before, if you remember, up at the top of the elevator lobby, they were dimensioning those at 36 inches wide up here. The ones down below, I believe, are significantly shorter in depth. It looks like they're 12 foot 11, or sorry, 1 foot 11, which would be 23 inches there. So I'm taking a line at 23 inches up, and I'm going to adjust the panels to match up with that line there. All right, now that I've got that set up, what I'm going to do is use the move command, and I'm going to place this a little closer to my view. I'm going to drop that right there, and then I'm going to mirror this across, using mid between 2 points again. So that way this sits right about there. That's looking nice and perfect there. So we've got those two cladding, those two panels cladding the walls on that side. We've got the start of our elevator lobby panels here. We're going to talk about reveals and what those panels should look like from the top-down view next. It's great that we have them put in. But now what we need to do is we need to find a way to break these up if they're exceeding a certain dimension here. Typically, with these panels, our standard really is going to be to try to minimize the panels down to a more manageable size, which we've kind of talked about before. When I do say a manageable size, what I'm talking about is most panels are going to be about 48 by 96 or 4 by 8 feet. That utilizes a few different, helps one, being able to get those panels into the building, to the floor they need to go on, through the hallways, corridors, and different rooms they need to go to get to the room you're installing them in. The other benefit to minimizing the panels to that dimension as well is that you're going to reduce the risk of not being able to find a material that's wider, as wide as you need. Most sheet sizes for materials are going to be sold in 4 by 8 sheets at the minimum, typically. So when you're dealing with panels like this, it's probably not a bad idea to try to consider that as something you want to include as part of your drawing. So as you're going through, we're going to try to make that happen. So we don't really want to go more than 4 by 8 for these panels. There are going to be panels here that are drawn without reveals. And when you have panels that are drawn without reveals, you have to add them in. There's really no chance that we're going to be able to make a panel this big. That's just kind of out of the question altogether. So with panels like that, we do need to find a way to decrease the size of them, and that would be where the reveals come into play. So as of right now, dimensionally, let's take a look at what we've got and spot some problem areas as to where we think we need to add reveals to. So the panels that are here, these two that are here and here, being that these are 2'8" wide, they shouldn't be a problem. We should be able to make those no big deal. These ones here that are 5'3", these are going to become more of an issue. Be strongly recommended that we do put a reveal in the center of those panels to break up the material and kind of help with, again, being able to get them in the building, and two, being sure that we can actually build these panels to the size that they are drawn at. As you get up to here, again, 5'3", most likely we'll need a reveal in the dead center of the panel. And this one here, being that it's not technically 5'8", really that panel is more along the lines of 2'8", maybe a little bit wider because it extends past this panel. So realistically, no more than 3 feet. That should be a non-issue there either. This one here is going to be a larger issue, but we should be able to make this work. This is that one that we looked at in the elevation view a moment ago that we just mentioned is going to be unrealistic to build without reveals, and we'll add those in as we need to here for that. So let's go back to our plan view and let's start identifying or taking those problem areas and working our way through them to make them work. All right, so although it's not shown here, this would be where that center reveal would go. I think it's going to be beneficial to our part to show it dead center. If you showed it off center in any way, it would probably look a little weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our standard 1/4 inch spline reveal for this area here. You should probably start by drawing a line where the reveal is going to be located, like the center of that reveal. If it helps you, being that you're still in training and you're still trying to figure out what these different reveals look like and what they mean, you can go to your on-site panels tool palette under reveals, and you can pull in what a spline reveal looks like using a standard detail. Really, that's more of a reference for you than anything else. But when you're dealing with spline reveals, it is important to remember that the gap between the panels should be a 1/4 inch wide, and the spline itself will be a 1/4 inch thick, and it'll be 1 1/4 inch wide from edge to edge, like that. So that would mean that the spline gets routed into the panel 1/2 inch on each side, like this. So let's go ahead and draw their splines. So we're going to go 0.25 on the thickness side and 1.25 on the width side. We're going to use the move command, and we're going to use shift right click mid between 2 points, and we're going to paste, we are going to paste this right in between the 2 panels. So using that center point of that line we just drew. All right, so the next step is going to be to take this line and to get that 1/4 inch reveal. So we need to offset that line 0.125 in either direction, which should give us a total space of a 1/4 inch right there. You can then trim these lines back just like that, which should represent what you're seeing here in this view for that detail. We'll just do something like that. And then later on, we will be hatching these reveals and panels in just a moment. All right. So one other thing that we haven't really covered yet is that we will need a reveal between the panel here and the metal for the opening between the, the metal for the elevator casing. I'm thinking we can probably, I want to try to match that 1/4 inch if we possibly can. Most of the time when you're dealing with a full depth reveal, you'll want to make that 3/4 wide. I have a hunch that is probably going to get some pushback from the architect here. And I only say that because with what we're showing here, if we were to go between a 1/4 inch reveal to a 3/4 reveal, like here being a 1/4 and then a 3/4 here, they may have some problems with that, and they may actually push back on us on that. So I want to try to draw it to what I think it should look like, and then we will see what happens there. We're going to decrease that by 0.25 as well. And then we'll put in a full depth reveal block here. So a full depth reveal block, usually what I'll do is go 3/4 thick on the thickness, and we'll make this 1.5 inches on the width side, just like that. Behind there, you can see clearly there's going to be a little bit of space. And there, what you're going to do is you're going to fill that in with shim. Yep, have a good night. We'll fill that in with shim like this. Shim's represented again just by a diagonal line through the object that you're showing. we'll go through and we'll hatch the rest of this later. I just wanted to kind of show that. Let's copy this down. We're going to need this down below here as well. Okay, and that should be what these are going to look like in between the elevator jams, just like what we showed here. We're going to copy that detail throughout. So at this point, maybe it makes sense to hatch this view because we're going to be recycling this over and over again. And I don't want to rehatch every little panel and every little reveal block that I have. So to save yourself those steps, why don't we go ahead and hatch these now? And then what we're going to do is we are going to use the mirror command again. I'm actually going to delete that panel set right there. I'm going to use mirror. And I'm going to mirror all of this over. Don't forget to include your spline and everything else. But highlight all of your panels, your reveals, your shims, everything there. Hit enter. Shift right click, go to mid between 2 points. And you're going to go from that midpoint to this midpoint. And just draw your line straight up like this. And do not erase your source object. Once you've done that, now you can see you've got a set of panels here, a set of panels there. And we're going to then copy those throughout anywhere they, well, I guess it's only one other area that would have the exact same 53-inch wide panel opening. So we're going to copy this over. Just like this. Okay. And then from there, we are going to finish out the rest of these panels. So we're going to match the same exact style of what we're doing over there. Provide a 1/4 inch full depth reveal right there. Same goes for here. We need that 1/4 inch full depth reveal right here. We still have to break this panel set up, so let's not forget about that. This will come down a 1/4 inch to match up there. This will come down a 1/4 inch as well. And we should also include a reveal along the wall over here as well. Now you could do a 1/4 inch there. It might be better to do the 3/4 on that side. But we'll see. I might leave it like that. That might be all right. Okay. I'm going to copy my shim and my reveal block using the base point of the corner of my panel here. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I want to copy this up to here as well. Let's go ahead and hatch our panel like that. And then mirror the hatching and the shim and the reveal block to these sets of panels over here. So shift right click, go mid between 2 points again, just like that. All right. We are getting somewhere here. All right, so this one's going to be a similar deal, just slightly different because this panel extends back behind this panel. So what we're going to do next is we're going to copy these up to here. That's your shim and your reveal. And then because this panel does not need a reveal, it's not more than 48 inches wide, we can just hatch it and we'll call that one done. Which should only leave us with the large panel set right here. This large panel set definitely needs more reveals added, and we're going to determine how we're going to do that here in just a moment. So easy way to go about adding reveals to a panel. If you draw a couple of construction lines out from that panel like this, and you go mid between 2 points like this, and you go straight up to the top. Okay, so something like this. Right now what I'm doing is I'm showing, I am planning to do an array path here. So you can kind of see me setting up the basics for that. I have 2 divider lines here, which are going to represent each of the reveals. And then I have my path. My path needs to go to the center between these 2 lines here. That is really important. If it's not centered, it will not copy these and make your panels equal. So you want to make sure that you have that dead center between these two lines here. Okay, next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this by 0.125. And the reason I'm doing that is because just like you have the center of that path to the center of this reveal here, I want to imagine that there would be a reveal here just temporarily behind this panel. Really, we don't need one there, but I'm going to put an imaginary one there. That way, and this is hard to explain, but as you get to putting your reveals in, from the elevation view, all of your panels will appear equal, like equally spaced. Hard to explain, but again, let's start that array path command. Select the two divider lines that we drew in, and then select our path. And it's going to pull up the array menu at the top of your screen. You're going to come up to here where it says, measure. You're going to switch this to divide. Right off the bat, that's what you want to do. You can see what's happening here is it's copying those two divider lines all the way up to the top. And one thing you want to pay attention to here is this dimension that's right here, right where it says between. The between dimension is going to be the dimension between the center of each reveal. Now we want to be careful not to exceed 48 inches for that. So what I'm going to do is start with a low number like 3, which would be, if you look at this, 3 would be 3 reveals or 2 panels. So really, now I'm looking at that. You can't have a panel at 68 inches wide. That's just not really realistic. So let's go down to 4. 4 would bring us to a panel width of 45.583 inches in between, which is actually within the range we want to be. So why don't we go ahead and use that? We'll have 3 panels and we'll have 4 reveals technically. We're going to close the array. And then what we're going to do is highlight that array object, and we're going to explode those objects there, which will delete the array from existence. We can delete these lines here because those are no longer needed. We can delete the path because the path is no longer needed. We've already drawn in this reveal, so those 2 lines are kind of not needed at this point either. So what's going to be next here is to copy the spline reveal from the panels below, and we're going to paste it exactly where these 2 divider lines intersect our panel. So like that, and like that. Okay, then what you can do is you can trim these lines out, just like we did before, just cleaning it up a bit to make sure that this looks professional and everything's all there. Close those lines out. All right, and then let's get to hatching. So we're going to use our vertical MDF hatch, and we're going to hatch these panels in just like this. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, we do need a reveal and we need some shim. So we're going to copy that up to the panels above. And then I think that really just about does it. So reveal spacing, we did an excellent job of getting those all squared away. We don't have any panels that are exceeding 48 inches wide, and we still have to deal with the panel heights, of course, because we know that we can't realistically have a panel that's this tall. This is going to be easily over 10 feet, which is going to be sort of enormous when it comes to panel sizes. So we're going to look at a way we can reduce those down to something more manageable. We won't really mess with that right now, but when we get to the elevation views, we'll take a look at that, and we'll just kind of stick that as a note in our caps here where we're going to go back to it and kind of work through those here in just a moment. So plan view wise, the only thing left you can really do with this is you can go through and kind of add in a little bit more detail. reason why I didn't delete this area here, although I'm not really using it for much, is that there are a lot of things that I can sort of recycle here. So for example, like the elevator cart, because I don't really feel like tracing and drawing that over again. What I can do is I can copy this over to our drawing here. And potentially like reuse these on the print. Let me try to find one that's in the middle. Maybe it'd be easier to copy that. Okay, yeah, that's going to be a lot better. So, all right, we'll copy that over. Okay. And then what we were seeing there is that when I copy that, this line that's here, okay, that was the top of the, that weird goofy looking L-shaped line. That was the top of the elevator jamb. So we need to line that up with the top of the elevator jamb on our drawing over here. Kind of like that. I can bring these back a little bit. Realize it's kind of intersecting there. I don't really want to show it that way. I kind of want to get this cleaned up, even though it's not part of our scope, but just to make sure it doesn't look goofy. Okay, and then you can just go ahead and copy this throughout. This will be there to represent the rest of your elevators. So we're going to copy these using a common base point to show how these elevators all kind of come together here. Actually, let me redo that. So here what we're going to do is use the mirror command. Seems like we've been having a repeat pattern of that. Anytime that we have something that's on one side of the elevator lobby and we're trying to copy it over, we're using the mirror command to do that. So I'm going to keep that process going here. Use the mirror command, shift right click, mid between 2 points. And then I should be able to use, let's go ahead and use the bottom corner of that this time to the bottom corner of the one over here. And say no to erasing our source objects. So now we have the elevators kind of drawn in a little bit. They are cut off in the view. If you go to the overall floor plan, you can see them a lot better. But what we're seeing there is like the entry into the elevator and then the cab, the elevator cab sticking out here and here. That's what these lines are representing here and here. That's like the entry and the elevator cab itself. All right. There we go. All right, I think I'm actually going to bring these over because what I would like to do with all of this is kind of, I'll delete that hatch too because I'm going to end up redoing that anyway. What I would like to do to make this a lot cleaner looking is I'm going to end up putting a brake line that extends all the way from down here to up here. And I'll do the same on this side of the elevator lobby as well. So brake line, we'll go from that endpoint up to there. And then we'll go from this endpoint up to there. All right, so now that we've got those drawn in, let's go ahead and put them on the correct layer. They should be on the dimension layer. Any dimensions, break lines, detail boxes or circles or anything like that are going to go on that dimension layer. So keep that consistent. We'll put that there. And then what we want to do is we are going to copy our, what are we calling them, plateaus and valleys. We are going to copy these across a little bit further down. All right. Let's keep that pattern repeating. When you get to the end, you can use the trim command to trim out some of this junk that you don't need. You can delete this line, I suppose. I don't think that's, oh, that's part of the grid. You don't want to delete that. So we're going to keep that there. We'll put that sand hatch back in here. There it is right there. Uh-oh, hold on. Hold on. There we go. If you ever have any problems with hatching a drawing, keep in mind that if you have something that you're hatching and you have part of it outside of your view, for example, like when I was hatching this, you notice that part of it got hatched that it wasn't supposed to. AutoCAD does have a hard time sort of figuring out what you're hatching if the entire thing is not on your screen. So sometimes it will fight you, other times it will not. It's a matter of how it's feeling that day, but just wanted to give you the heads up if you are struggling with that hatch like I just did, to try to zoom out a little bit or try to get your drawing to be fully in the view. That way you can actually see, or AutoCAD can see what it's hatching. If it's off the screen, it tends to not like that, and sometimes it will fight you on that one. All right. I think we're looking pretty good here. Honestly, like what I would like to do next is kind of throw in some wall lines like this to represent where the wall pattern should be. Kind of like that. And this one will be a pretty extensive hatch, just like this. Because those walls are by others, of course, that means that these are going to go on the existing layer like we have been doing. Like that. All right, and then at this point, really, I don't need this view. I can really just delete that. And then I'm just going to recycle, well, not recycle, but I'm going to move our view down to here, recycle the space that we had it saved at. All right. So yeah, we've got a pretty decent elevator lobby drawn in now at this point. So we're doing really good. Plan view, I'd say we're done for right now until we get to the plotting stage a little bit later. And on time, we are doing about 47 minutes at this point. So what we can do now is we can focus in on probably one elevation view and maybe finish the next elevation view in the next segment, which would include elevation view and section view information. So let's go ahead and start with this side here. What I'm going to do is copy that plan view, bring it over here, rotate it, and then I'm going to use this information now to draw my plan view. So we're going to take lines straight down just like this. We're going to copy those lines across. These will be our construction lines. See, man? All right, just like this. So make sure that you do place a point anywhere there is a change that you want to see on the elevation view. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm making sure I include each part of that metal and then the setback for my full depth reveal. I also want to make sure that I'm capturing things like even a silly thing like that, the in between the two elevator doors. The spline is going to be super important. We want to make sure that we dimension, or not dimension, but throw in lines for each of these little items here. Make sure that you don't forget any of them as much as possible. All right, there we go. There we go. Okie dokie. Oh, and let's draw a line there to represent this opening between the two walls there. And we've already done that over here, so we're good on that part. So now we got this sort of mess of what looks like a barcode. No big deal. We're going to take a line straight across. This is to represent where the floor is. So always start with where the floor is and then work your way up. So let's go back to our elevation views again. All right. See if we can find dimensionally what we're dealing with here. So you can kind of see this if you zoom in close enough. There's a 10-inch dimension which goes from the floor, looks like probably to the bottom of that reveal between the panel and the base trim. I'd say one thing that's probably a good place to look to is I know we just did a drawing for, I think it was P5 P5? No, sorry, not P5. Let me find it real quick. Was it P1? No, not P1. My apologies. I think it's P15. Yep, that's it. So we just did a drawing for P15, which has the exact same base trim and the exact same reveal between the base trim and the panels. So just to clarify and make sure what we did there, we're going to match the same detail here. So we show 10 inches from the floor to the top of the base trim, and then a 3/8 gap between the base trim and the start of the panel. And then in between that 3/8, there's a metal angle that sits right there. So we're going to take that into account as we're drawing this here. So offset 10 inches up, and then offset 0.375 for the gap between the panels and the base trim. All right, next up, let's go back to our elevation views again and see what we're dealing with. So you can kind of see this here. It's a little bit hard to read what's happening, but it looks like that crosshair kind of intersects the top of that reveal, which is also the top of the door here as well, or the door opening. So from the floor to there, it looks like there is a dimension of 13'1". Also between here, the top of that base trim, it looks like to, oh, I see, they're not measuring the reveal. So really, this is 7'2" plus 10. So the doors themselves are 96 inches tall. So let's offset a line from the floor, 96 inches up, like that. And then from there, it looks like we have a dimension of 4'5" plus another dimension of 8 inches there to represent where the top of the elevator door starts. So yeah, 61. Okay, so this should be about 61 inches tall. Let's go ahead and offset that at 61 high from there. Pardon me, sorry about that. The tea is giving me hiccups. All right, I'll keep on moving here. So right now, I have the top of the door, which would be this line here. Then I have the top of the metal around the opening of the elevator opening, and that would be this line here. But that's to the top, so that is a 1/4 inch thick. That needs to come down a 1/4 inch for that to work out, all right? So 0.25. All right. Okay. And then up from there, are we given a height dimension? Good golly, it does not look like it. Okay. One thing that we're going to do here, we're going to look at the reflected ceiling plan in hopes that maybe they included a height dimension here. You can see I have height dimensions for the insides of the metal, which is great, but that's already confirmed based on what we're seeing in the elevation view we just looked at. Here, though, you can see there's a height of 15 feet, and then there's a height in the middle of the elevator lobby at 14'6". So what that would mean is that the ceiling here is taller than the ceiling in here. So let's go ahead and offset this line up 15 feet. So 180 inches. All right. And then from there, we can start figuring out the rest of our view. So we've got all of our vertical lines based on our plan view. We've got all of our horizontal lines based on the dimensions that we were provided in the architectural elevation view. So now we can start trimming everything back to where it needs to be. I want to keep pushing forward. I'm about to be losing my voice here very soon, but I really do want to make sure that we get this all complete here early this week. So I'm gonna just push through and keep on moving. That way we don't lose track of time with all of this. All right, so this is to represent, if I look back at my plan view, those two lines that I've highlighted are the outsides of the metal. Outside of the metal. Okay, cool. And I do know that the metal stops at the top of this line. So really, I should probably trim that back to there. I should probably trim this back to there. All right, I'm going to do that around all of the elevator. Hey. All right, see you, Keaton. I'm going to trim these lines back to here. Again, just selecting the outside of the metal because I know for a fact that that metal has to stop like we did over here. I'm going to stop it at the top of that line. And I'm going to repeat that process over and over until I get to the edge of, or the edge of my view. Really, this is kind of a very nitpicky process for right now. Once we start to eliminate some of these extra lines that we're seeing here, we should be able to eventually make this look a lot cleaner. It's just going to take a little bit of time and patience to get through all of that. The elevator doors do stop at the top of this line. Okay, so now that we know that, anytime there's an elevator door, remember we have that middle line in the center where the two doors meet? Oh, I might have accidentally deleted some of those or forgot to copy them. Let me bring those over real quick. Got a few of those. All right, we're gonna trim those back to this line here. And this line is the top of this line here. So let's go back here. We're gonna trim that, that, and that. So now we can actually see where the doors are at. And then if you want to take it a step further, one thing you could also do is you can trim the base trim lines. So that will help clean up more of like what we're seeing here. Again, this is the outside edge of that metal that goes around the elevator doors that I'm selecting right now. Oops. So all of these lines here, just going through and selecting all of those. Okay, and then in between those lines, this base trim does not exist. So we're going to trim those out. So you can kind of start to see how this is coming together. All right. At the top of that base trim, these reveals would stop there. And that's going to be all the way around this elevator lobby. So we're going to trim those all back to there. And trim this base back to there. And I'll do the same on this side. Trim that base back to there. Could trim most of these lines actually back to there because that's the edge of the wall, meaning that that's actually like this line here and this line here. You can start to see it's coming together a little bit more and more each time we trim something up. It's important to remember what we're doing though. Metal is going to go all the way to the floor, kind of like what's shown here. Base trim is going to stop to the edge of it, like what's shown here. Reveal should stop there. Although they don't have the reveal here, that reveal is going to stop at the top of the base, just like this. So like what we've been doing, really. So that's about that. Reveals in between panels, those should also stop at the top of that reveal between the base and the panels. And that's going to be across the board. We'll clean those up. Actually, this one here is a little different. That's one of those, just like this side, what we're seeing there is we're seeing the panel, that's the archway panel on the outside of the elevator lobby. Same with this here too. There's no base underneath of it, so that needs to go straight to the floor. All right. Keep on moving forward. And we are at 59 minutes. Oh boy. I thought we'd get a little bit further than that, but we'll keep going for a little bit more and then I'll cut this one off as well. Okay. Once we get to here, sorry, just thinking in my head. Trim some of these lines back. I think that should be, you know what, I messed that up a little bit. Let me go back a step. I'm trying to show that metal. The metal piece that goes around the door that you can see in this white box here. We do have a little bit of fine tuning to do above the elevator openings too, which I'll get into in just a moment. Okay, there we go. That's not looking too bad. Okay, so see, man, what we were talking about here is the fine tuning that we're going to do above. I'm going to move this line over to here. There we go. I'm going to move these lines over to there to line up with the edge of our panel, just like so. Okay, not too bad. Because this is all metal trim here. These will be reveals between panels. And so with that being said, like I just wanted to clean those up a tiny bit here. I know this is probably a confusing place to leave off. I might leave it here, and then we can finish up this view in the next video. I really didn't want to do that because we're pretty close to being done with this one, but it'll be all right though, if we have to. I'm just trying to make these videos a little bit more manageable in size, so maybe as soon as I clean these corners up, I will go ahead and pause this one and we'll make another video on top of this. Just trim those back. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Pretty good indeed. Mm-hmm. All right, see you, man. Have a good night. We'll bring these lines back to here, and then I'm going to pause this one for the day, and then we will pick this back up again. What I'm trimming these lines back for is these are the tops of the elevator doors. So really those lines don't carry over to here. And you can see that here, there's no horizontal lines there that go past the elevator openings for those. When we get back, when we get back, we're going to need to figure out something here. These panels that we have currently drawn are kind of tall. And I mean, looking at them specifically, they're like 146 inches and maybe about 3/8. So really, we do need to add another reveal in. I think that really like these would have a reveal here to line up with the doors most likely, which we can add that in. Really, there's no other horizontal lines that line up with anything. And so I can't really do anything with that. And probably most likely the reveal is going to go there. Also, when we get back to this too, we're going to be adding in the call buttons, the call lanterns, and any other equipment that relates to the elevators as well. And we'll just draw that in on the existing layer, kind of like how we have been for anything that's not by onsite. I think that really should do it for this elevation view though for right now. So the next video, we will clean it up just a tad bit more. And then the video, well, the same video, we will finish up this other elevation view over here. And then work our way through the section views that go hand in hand with these elevations. So we'll pause it here and then we'll come back to this and finish up the rest of it here shortly.